So continuing with nutrition and exercise, in fact, this is the very last video clip, so we'll see if I can avoid saying so much. So, talking about pre-exercise and recovery nutrition. Before exercising, you want to consume complex carbohydrates that are absorbed more slowly 1 to 4 hours before exercise. More carbohydrate the longer the time period is before the exercise commences. The pre-exercise meal should be low in fat because a high-fat meal before exercise can make you more sluggish. It slows down the absorption of the carbohydrate too much. And again, like I said, some protein pre-exercise may benefit in terms of maximum muscle mass gains. But, the complex carbohydrates before exercise can improve energy for the exercise. And, the only time we recommend simple and refined carbohydrates is after exercise to stimulate insulin secretion. After exercise, the protein plus simple carbs is recommended within 30 minutes or so. There's some people who debate, that time frame, but you want 3 grams of carb for every gram protein as the ideal carbohydrate to protein ratio to maximize recovery. So one of the benefits of exercise is it increases the basal energy expenditure or the metabolic rate, which would help with body composition, decreasing fat mass. So both strength training and cardio will increase the basal energy expenditure for a period of time after the exercise is over, especially vigorous aerobic exercise. Up to 24 hours, you get a boost in metabolic rate. You also increase metabolic rate with increased muscle mass. They estimate that, the studies really vary. It depends on the composition of your muscle fibers. There's fast twitch and slow twitch. But anyway, by increasing 1 pound of muscle, some say you can only increase your basal energy expenditure by 6 calories per day. Some say 30 to 50 calories, which can add up over time. So as far as increased vitamin and mineral needs for exercise, there are slightly higher increased needs for vitamin E and C, the antioxidants. When you exercise, when you perform aerobic exercise, you do produce more free radicals. And they used to, back in the day, they recommended that athletes who are exercising regularly, including Olympic athletes, take an antioxidant supplement. But they realized that, again, the principle of when you stress a body system, it adapts by getting better. They found that by providing the antioxidants and supplements, the body didn't have the chance to adapt and get better in its antioxidant defense mechanisms. So if you really want to improve your antioxidant, your free radical fighting capacity and your antioxidant capacity of your body, what you want to do is, not take massive amounts of antioxidant supplements when you exercise, but let your body adapt to the increased free radicals from exercise by improving the antioxidant defense mechanisms. Now, if you're one of those weekend warriors and you're not in good condition and all of a sudden you have an all-out type of thing, that's when an antioxidant supplement may be beneficial because you'll increase antioxidant production when your antioxidant defense mechanisms aren't great. The B vitamins, like I said before, are needed for energy, and other nutrients are needed in greater amounts. Some are lost in sweat, some are needed for the production of ATP, but the increased amounts are easily met through diet if you're eating healthy, because when you're exercising a lot, you should be eating more because you need the extra calories. Fruits and vegetables especially, will provide those additional nutrient needs. The exception is female athletes may need an iron supplement. There is well, first of all, some female athletes don't consume adequate iron, and if they're young and still menstruating, they lose iron. So there is an anemia that can occur in athletes. Now, when you start exercising or when you start an exercise regimen, your blood volume increases. So you can develop what's called a pseudo-anemia, where it looks like your iron stores are low, or the levels of iron in your body are low, but it's only because your blood is more dilute. To determine if you actually have sports anemia, you need to measure the ferritin level, which is the stored iron. When you do a lot of pounding activity like running, that can cause red blood cells to burst, and you can develop, a sports anemia from that. So if you're concerned about anemia for athletes, the blood test to do is ferritin to determine if it's a true iron deficiency anemia. As far as the electrolytes, sodium and potassium, they are lost in sweat. Again, your body adapts. You lose less as conditioning improves. But if you have experienced a drenching sweat for days on end, that's when you need to think about electrolyte replacement. So the sports drinks are formulated to replace electrolytes. Now, hydration is really important for maximized exercise performance. Dehydration can impair performance by 20 to 30%, and water is okay for most unless you have that drenching sweat day after day where you lose electrolytes. So when you're exercising, especially, in Texas where, you sweat a lot, you don't want to lose more than 3% of your body weight during exercise or during an endurance event. So hydration is actually really important. Now, remember when we talked about dehydration in an earlier unit, we talked about the fact that some marathon runners have actually died because they overhydrated with water and their blood sodium levels dropped. So, you have to be careful about not overdoing it with water. Just a note, alcohol is not an appropriate fluid replacement beverage, although Lance Armstrong here is drinking a glass of champagne at the end of a Tour de France. Now, take a look at his appearance, how his cheeks are sunken, and he's pretty thin at the end of the Tour de France. Now, this was a little bit later when he was accepting an award from a sports organization, and you can see how his fat mass is recovered, his muscle mass is recovered from that ultra endurance event. Because when you do that type of ultra endurance event, you're going to rely on some protein for energy. So his muscle mass was a little bit depleted, and definitely his fat mass. So the guidelines for fluid intake: 2 cups of fluid before exercise, then about a half cup or 4 ounces every 15 minutes. And then after exercise, 3 cups for every pound of weight loss. If you're exercising in a really hot environment where you're sweating a ton, it is kind of important to weigh before and after to make sure that you rehydrate adequately. Now, a lot of you indicated at the beginning of the semester that you were interested in macros. And that refers to the grams of protein, carb, and fat that you consume. A lot of people are tracking that these days. And I wanted to address that because it was an expressed interest. And I have 2 cases of people I worked with. One was a college, well, both were college females. One was a CrossFit trainer, and she was discouraged because she had plateaued in her strength. And I asked her about her diet, and she was following a low-carb diet, not keto low, but a low-carb diet. And I said, well, why don't you try and increase your carbohydrate intake? She did. This was at the end of the semester, and she came back, or end of the school year. The beginning of the next school year, she came back, and she had made massive strength gains by increasing her carbohydrate intake. She said she had a lot more energy for better workouts. So she was someone who was tracking her macros and found out that, a regimen that a lot of other people were following was not optimal for her. Then another student, the same school year, ironically, came to me. She was a bodybuilder, and her muscle size wasn't increasing. Again, she was following a low-carb diet, and I said, well, why don't you try increasing your carbohydrate intake? And again, both of these students, they were eating healthy diets, just low carb. So she increased her carbohydrate intake, and the next school year she came back and she had gained a lot of muscle mass. Again, saying she had better energy for better workouts and was really pleased with the results. Now, remember I showed you the case of my nephew. He's one that started a low carbohydrate diet and lost a tremendous amount of weight that he needed to. And he was exercising a lot, and he's, really cut with a large muscle mass now. So he does really well with a lower carbohydrate diet. So when you're counting macros, there's all sorts of regimens, but remember that everyone is individual. Nobody's alike, and you need to do some experimentation to figure out the macros that are best for you, that are optimal for you. So the bottom line is you have to experiment. So this ends the last of our videos for this class. So the semester, once you finish this, is almost complete once you take your last quiz. So thanks for your patience with my ums and my glitches, and best of luck to you. I love this class.